The ballroom was too bright for a place where half the people were smiling through judgment. Crystal chandeliers floated above like artificial stars, reflecting off polished marble floors that cost more than most people's yearly salaries. Soft music played in the background, the kind designed to make even uncomfortable silence feel expensive. Waiters moved like trained actors between tables, offering drinks that nobody really needed but everyone accepted anyway because refusing would look poor. At the center of it all stood a man who believed the room existed for him. Retired now, but still carrying the posture of someone used to command, control, and unquestioned respect. His suit was perfect, his voice steady, and his smile carefully calibrated for maximum authority. Every few seconds, he would pause mid-conversation just to make sure people were still listening to him breathe. And then there was his son. He didn't fit anywhere in the room. No expensive suit, no polished smile, no confident posture. Just someone standing slightly to the side like he had accidentally wandered into the wrong celebration and was too polite to leave. People noticed him the way people notice a stain on a white shirt, quietly, then repeatedly, then with growing annoyance. The father noticed it too, and unlike everyone else, he didn't hide his reaction. "That's my son," he said at one point to a group of retired executives, his tone sharp enough to cut through the polite laughter around him. Unfortunately. A few chuckles followed. The son didn't react. He had learned long ago that reacting only fed the performance. The crowd shifted as the main stage lights brightened. The retirement speech was about to begin. Guests settled into seats, glasses lifted, attention focused. Even the air seemed to hold itself still, waiting for something meaningful. The father stepped forward like he was stepping onto a battlefield he already owned. He began with all the expected words: gratitude, legacy, years of service, loyalty. The kind of speech people clap for without listening to. But slowly, something changed in his tone. A familiar pride sharpened into something colder. His eyes drifted toward his son. It started subtly at first. A comment about discipline. Then another about earning one's place in the world. Then the shift became obvious. The speech was no longer about retirement. It was about comparison. "You spend your life building something," he said, scanning the room, "only to realize not everyone in your own home understands the value of effort." Laughter rippled through the crowd, unsure whether it was safe or required. Then he stopped pretending. "My son," he said louder now, "is the biggest disappointment of my family's name." The room froze for half a second too long. Some people laughed awkwardly, assuming it was a harsh joke. Others looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks. A few leaned forward, sensing entertainment disguised as tragedy. The son felt every eye shift onto him. Not like pressure. More like measurement. The father continued anyway, emboldened by attention. Words sharpened into public judgment. He spoke about wasted potential, about lack of direction, about embarrassment that had followed him for years. Each sentence landed heavier than the last, like he was trying to bury his son in front of witnesses. And yet the son didn't move. He simply watched the room the way someone watches weather before a storm, quiet, observant, calculating patterns no one else noticed. Because something about this event was wrong. Not emotionally. Structurally. The hotel system interface embedded in his wrist device had been glitching since the reception began. He had been assigned, unofficially of course, to manage the digital logistics of the event, something his father framed as giving him something useful to do for once. So he had access to bookings, to billing, to everything. And buried inside that system was an anomaly that didn't match any human logic of expense or event planning. A charge that kept repeating itself under different labels. A classification tag that kept translating differently depending on the device language settings. One version called it a Premium Hospitality Expansion Suite. Another called it High-Tier Experiential Diplomatic Environment. And another didn't translate at all. The son blinked slowly as he finally understood what he was looking at. The father was still speaking, still performing, still enjoying the sound of his own authority collapsing into applause at the edges of the room. But the son raised his head slightly. For the first time all evening, he stepped forward. The son didn't interrupt immediately. He didn't rush. That was the first thing that made the room start to feel uneasy, because people expected drama to be loud. This wasn't loud. This was controlled. He lifted his wrist device and tapped once. A soft hum spread through the ballroom as the central holo projector, originally meant for a sentimental retirement slideshow, flickered and shifted. The father noticed it instantly and frowned, already preparing to shut it down. "Stop messing with the system," he snapped. "This is not your place." But the projection didn't stop. Instead, a clean interface appeared, hotel billing records. Detailed, itemized, impossible to ignore. Rows of charges floated in the air like floating accusations. The son finally spoke, calm and even. "I just have one question." A few guests shifted in their seats. Something about his tone removed the comfort of spectacle. This wasn't a breakdown. It was documentation. He pointed at the floating data. "Why does a standard corporate retirement booking include something labeled as a VIP multi-species leisure expansion package?" A few people laughed again, unsure what they were looking at. The father tried to step forward, but the system had already locked into public display mode. Every movement he made only highlighted him under the projection's light. "That's a system error," the father said quickly. "Ignore it." But the son didn't. The data expanded automatically, responding to his input. More entries unfolded. Across the room, something subtle changed among the disguised alien attendees. Their expressions didn't match human confusion anymore. Small biometric indicators flickered near their collars and accessories, emotion tracking bands translating human speech into alien comprehension layers. And what they were seeing was not normal. Zero-gravity wellness suites. Cognitive relaxation chambers. Memory reconstruction lounges. Emotional calibration theaters. One alien leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing in interest rather than confusion. Another tilted their head in a rhythm humans would interpret as curiosity, but was actually structured analytical attention. The human guests, however, began to whisper. "Is this some kind of luxury upgrade? Did the company pay for this? Why would retirement include any of that?" The father's face tightened. "This is ridiculous. I never booked anything like that." The son tapped again. The log shifted. A timestamp appeared. Late night. 2 weeks before the event. Logged in under verified biometric authorization. The father's signature. A small silence spread across the room, not dramatic, but deep enough that people stopped breathing casually. "That's not possible," the father said, but his voice had already lost its certainty. The son continued anyway, because now the system was fully open. "There's more," he said. The alien interface layer, unknown to most humans in the room, automatically translated one of the package labels incorrectly due to cross-species semantic drift. What appeared on the human side as Premium Leisure Expansion Suite was interpreted by alien systems as something entirely different. The son watched the translation correction unfold in real time. Then he paused. Because even he hadn't expected that part. The alien diplomat in disguise shifted slightly in her seat, her expression changing for the first time from observation to recognition. The system corrected the phrase. Not luxury. Not entertainment. But an interspecies emotional immersion protocol. A structured diplomatic simulation designed to test how sentient beings react under extreme social exposure, humiliation pressure, and identity destabilization. In simpler terms, an alien psychological endurance trial disguised as hospitality services. The son exhaled slowly. "So," he said, almost conversational now, "you didn't just book a conference hall." He looked at his father. "You booked a live emotional simulation system designed for alien diplomatic evaluation." The room went completely still. Even the background music seemed to hesitate. And then, almost casually, the son added one final detail. "According to the logs, you completed multiple test scenarios." A ripple of confused laughter broke out again, this time less certain, more nervous. The alien diplomat's eyes narrowed with increasing fascination. Because in their culture, completing such simulations unknowingly wasn't just rare. It was statistically significant. The silence didn't last long, but it changed everything. The father tried to recover first, stepping forward with the kind of anger people use when they realize authority is slipping out of reach. His voice rose again, sharper now, less controlled. "This is nonsense," he snapped. "Some kind of system manipulation. He's embarrassing me on purpose." But the room didn't respond the way it used to. A few executives looked at each other instead of him. Not in agreement, but in evaluation. Like they were suddenly reconsidering what kind of man had been standing in front of them all evening. The alien diplomat stood up. That alone changed the atmosphere. She didn't rush, didn't show aggression. She simply moved with calm precision, the way someone does when the outcome is already known. Her disguise as a corporate consultant didn't hide her presence anymore. Something about her posture had shifted from observer to authority. She spoke softly, but every translation device in the room amplified her words in slightly different emotional tones. "The logs are authentic," she said. A pause. "The system shows full biometric authorization." The father hesitated for the first time. The son stayed quiet now, watching the reaction cascade like a chain he had already set in motion, but was no longer controlling. The alien diplomat continued, eyes flicking briefly to the floating interface. "And your recorded responses during the simulation are statistically unusual." That word landed differently. Unusual. Not wrong. Not fraudulent. Not broken. Just outside expected parameters. The son noticed something shift in her attention when she looked at him instead of his father. A recalibration. Like the system was now reassigning relevance. She stepped closer, not invading space, but crossing a boundary humans instinctively respected without realizing it. "You," she said to the son, "show no destabilization response under public humiliation pressure." It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. The son shrugged slightly. "I've had practice." That line caused a strange reaction among the alien attendees. Their emotional bands flickered in synchronized patterns, something close to interest, maybe even approval. Meanwhile, the father tried again to seize control. "He's twisting everything," he said loudly. "This is my retirement event. Not a circus." But the word circus only made it worse. Because now people were looking at him like he was the performance. The alien diplomat raised one hand gently, and the room quieted without effort. "In our evaluation framework," she said, "accidental participation in emotional immersion protocols indicates high adaptive intelligence." The father blinked. "What does that even mean?" The son answered before she could. "It means you didn't just book the wrong package," he said quietly. "You triggered a system designed to test emotional stability in interspecies diplomacy environments. A beat. And passed parts of it without realizing." That second sentence changed everything. A few guests straightened. Others leaned in. The energy shifted from humiliation to curiosity. Even respect in some corners, though not for the father in the way he expected. The alien diplomat looked at the father again, this time with scientific detachment. "You may be unsuitable for leadership," she said, "but you demonstrate unexpected resilience under psychological stress." That was not praise. But it wasn't dismissal either. It was classification. The father, who had spent his entire life being evaluated in human terms, status, rank, respect, suddenly found himself evaluated in something colder, more absolute. The son finally stepped aside from the projection interface. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. But something in his posture had changed. Not confidence. Clarity. The alien diplomat turned slightly toward him. "And you," she said, "did not react like a typical human subject?" A pause. "That is significantly more interesting." The word hung in the air longer than it should have. Interesting. The father looked between them, realizing too late that the narrative had already moved beyond him. And for the first time that night, he had nothing left to interrupt. The father tried one last time to reclaim the room, but it didn't land the way he expected anymore. His voice still carried authority, but it no longer controlled attention. People were listening the way you listen to someone arguing with a system that has already finished processing them. "This is still my event," he said, slower now, as if repeating it could rebuild its meaning. "You are all misunderstanding." The alien diplomat gently raised a hand. Not sharply. Not aggressively. Just enough. And the room obeyed her instead. "That is incorrect," she said calmly. "According to the active evaluation protocol, ownership of narrative authority has already shifted." A few humans blinked at that phrasing, unsure if it was metaphor or law. The son, however, understood something simpler. The situation was no longer emotional. It was procedural. The alien interface above them updated again, displaying a final summary of the unintended simulation exposure. Lines of data flowed in clean, cold structure. Emotional response mapping. Stress endurance. Behavioral consistency under public degradation. Then a classification tag appeared beside the father's profile. Unintentional participant, high volatility, moderate resilience. The father stared at it like it was supposed to apologize. Instead, it simply remained. The alien diplomat turned toward the crowd. "Under interspecies diplomatic standards," she announced, "this individual has inadvertently activated a behavioral trial sequence and completed it without awareness of the parameters." A pause. "This qualifies as accidental participation in advanced emotional resilience testing." A few guests let out uncertain laughter, not mocking now, but because the situation had become too strange not to release tension somehow. The father looked around, searching for support, but found none in the way he expected. The same people who had laughed at his son earlier were now watching him with cautious distance, like he had stepped outside the familiar rules of success. And then the alien diplomat did something unexpected. She shifted her attention fully to the son. "You," she said again, more precise this time, "demonstrate controlled emotional response, pattern recognition, and non-reactive behavioral stability under extended humiliation exposure." The son exhaled slightly. "Is that good or bad?" "In our systems," she replied, "it is classified as highly suitable for cross-species negotiation environments." A faint pause followed. "Meaning you are being recommended for recruitment into an interspecies advisory framework." That landed differently. Not like a promotion. Like being reclassified into a different category of existence. The room didn't explode into reaction immediately. It sank into it slowly, like understanding was taking time to load. The father finally spoke again, but his voice had lost its structure. "So what becomes important now because of a mistake in a hotel system?" The son looked at him, not angry, not triumphant. Just steady. "It wasn't a mistake," he said. "It was exposure." That word lingered longer than anything else. Exposure. To systems beyond family expectations. Beyond reputation. Beyond humiliation as a tool of control. The alien diplomat stepped slightly closer to the son again, and this time there was no ambiguity in her curiosity. It wasn't personal in the human sense yet, but it was focused. "We would require cooperation in future diplomatic emotional translation events," she said. "Your behavioral profile reduces misinterpretation risk by 47%. The son blinked. "That sounds like I'm being hired for not making things worse." A rare expression, something like amusement, passed through her features. "That is a correct simplification." Behind them, the father stood in the center of a celebration that was no longer structured around him. Guests were no longer waiting for his next sentence. Some were already discussing logistics, some reviewing the alien interface data, some simply trying to process what their evening had become. The son didn't look back at him immediately. Not because he was ignoring him. Because for the first time, there was nothing left to prove in that direction. Finally, he stepped toward the exit balcony, the alien diplomat following at a measured pace. Outside, the city lights stretched across the horizon, reflecting off glass towers like distant signals from another world. She stood beside him. A long pause passed between them, not awkward, just unfamiliar. Then she spoke again, quieter now. In your species, she said, is emotional conflict always resolved through public evaluation events involving family members? The son gave a tired half-smile. Only the memorable ones. She processed that carefully, as if storing it for future translation calibration. Then, after a moment, your behavior suggests you are not a disgrace in your classification system. He let out a small breath. Depends who's doing the classifying. For the first time that night, the son didn't feel like he was being measured. Just observed. And somewhere behind them, inside the glowing hall still filled with confused celebration and collapsing reputations, the father remained at the center of a story that no longer belonged to him.